Then beneficence is the second dimension, which means to do good or to do no harm. Have you ever heard of this terminology? Beneficence?
It's very in our books.
Yeah, it's in your books, yeah. In your training, somewhere you must have encountered this word. But beneficence means the do no harm principle, that whenever we work with patients or caring for people, nurses should always do what is in the best interest of the patient. I don't need to explain that any further. Who has any questions on it? Right? Then justice. Let me just pause here and go back to beneficence. I wonder, who's the registered nurses here? Okay. I want to ask you, if you are confronted in a situation, say you work in a rural hospital, where the doctors there's one doctor on the town, and he's about 30 kilometers to 40 kilometers in the Karoo. And you are in the hospital, and you have a person who has a bilateral pneumothorax. And the patient's saturation, oxygen saturation, is 89% or 85%. But previously, you work in a big academic setting, or you work in the military, in the war zone, where you were used to putting in underwater chest drains. What will you do? The doctor tells you from there far, Sissy, put the patient on 40% oxygen so long until I come. And you see the patient is going down, the sats is dropping. To do good or to do no harm? What will you do? And ultimately the patient is going to stop breathing. In any case, then he needs to be intubated. And that was part of your emergency work on the war zone. What will you do?
In that scenario, I can't make a decision because I'm not proficient and skilled in that area. But if it should be in a situation where I feel I'm competent to do something skilled,
yes,
I would do the skill thing if I know I'm going to succeed.
Excellent. Who says so? Who says you can work out of your scope of practice? Because that's a doctor's work.
That is where the ethical dilemma and decision comes in.
I don't want that answer. I don't want that one. Legally, who says so? Who says that if you are skilled, or what tells you, if you're skilled enough to do something for the do no harm and to do good, and you do it well, and then you save the patient's life, what tells you or what covers you? Because it's not in our scope, it's not Article 38A in the Nursing Act either.
It's my own confidence and my own risk.
She says it's a confidence and a risk. That is a risk to risk like that.
But it always comes back to want you.
I want you to think, people, ethos and professional practice. I want you to think legally.
But you're giving us a lecture on ethics.
No, I don't want that also. Have you ever heard of the Regulation 387, the acts and omissions? Huh? You know what? We sometimes work and we forget. Because that tells you, in one of the articles there, in the subsections tells you, that it boils down to as long as you do good to the patient, it is okay to work out of the scope of another professional for what you're not qualified to, as long as nothing goes wrong with the patient. It's an act to do good. The moment something goes wrong with the patient, it's an omission. And then you are going to be at fault, big problems. And that is there's a hairline in our scope. Sorry that I exclude the sisters now. But there's a big conflict of interest in the registered nurse's scope, because you are trained on a higher cognitive level with pathology, microbiology, physiology, anatomy, all the core fundamentals which allows you to make a decision and a nursing diagnosis based on what you see there and what you see. It happened to me time and again, people. I had to give anesthetics in Kafinia, in my hometown where I'm coming from, because there was only one doctor in the town. Because the other sister on duty stood with her fingers in the patient's vagina, stuck around umbilical prolapse of a umbilical cord. Yeah. And she couldn't help the doctor. And lo and behold, the assistant nurse took the table for the operation. So that was the scenario there. Yes, the doctor prepared all the anesthetic drugs, but he was in such a state, he intubated the patient, but I had to sustain that intubation, maintain it, and I had to administer the anesthetic drugs. I had a big problem with it because I was a young sister. I was about 3-4 years as a registered person. And this is what happened to me. And I interacted with SANC. And that is the answer that I got. Did something wrong happen to the patient? Are you able to perform skillful intubation of a patient? Yes. Where did you work before? In the research unit. It was part of my day-to-day thing. Sometimes I had to do it. I was trained to do it safely. So did anything happen to the patient? No. Then it's okay. It was a good act. The moment something goes wrong, the patient had an anesthetic there, I would have probably gone to jail because then it becomes an omission. It's not unfair. You see, that is why the sisters are so up, check, up.
We're trying to help the patient.
Yes.
If it's a good outcome,
But
then it's good. But if something goes wrong, then...
But what is your scope of practice? That is the doctor's scope of practice. But as a registered nurse, it puts you... Okay, here's another one. You stand on Cape Town station or Belleville station coming from a shift. And you're tired, you work the whole night, you stand. And the next moment, but you have your uniform on. And the next moment, somebody screams, "Nurse! Help! Patient is going to give birth." Who of you have been in a situation like that? Are you a accoucheur? Yeah, but then you have to be able to perform that. I'm talking about our enrolled staff now. Who of you have been confronted with that? And then you do the delivery. Or you're a registered nurse, a bridging course without midwifery, and you perform the delivery. Nothing happens to the baby and the mother's okay. But the moment that child, there was a shoulder dystocia, and you couldn't get the baby out. You took responsibility and accountability to say, I'm laying my hands on you. It poses an ethical dilemma because I know what to do because in my training I did first aid for an emergency delivery. But what if it becomes a complicated thing?
But equally, can you stand back and let that person stand
just and the baby falls and die?
Competent, you know, that's equally.
Can you see how you reason with your own morals here inside? That is an ethical dilemma. You have to make a decision based on all of this.